Hi, Assalamualaikum. Today we all together want to present our Macroeconomics Assignment Eco 2023. We are from Group 3. Now we want to introduce our name. My name is Nurun Adila binti Ismail.
My name is Nur Adrina Risha binti Muhammad Rizwan.
My name is Nur Aladayanti binti Muhammad Azizi.
My name is Ainin Zulaika binti Zazani.
My name is Nur Izadi Mazhar binti Bi'ul Mamai.
Hello, my name is Nur Shahira Atika.
Our first question is the definition of inflation. Inflation is an important measure of the state of the economy. Inflation occurs when there is a continuous increase in the general level of price. It reduces a person's income by reducing the purchasing power of the money. There are three main criteria for inflation. Firstly, is all the goods and services in the economy must experience the rise in prices. For example, if the price of gasoline increases, we did not call it an inflation. This is because gasoline is the only good that is affected. Next is inflation also is a continuous increase in the general price level in the long term. For example, if prices of the goods increase only once but did not continue to increase, we did not call it an inflation. Lastly, inflation is also an unlimited increase in price level. For example, the increase in the general price level is very high. In short, if the rising level of prices in an economy does not include the criteria, is not known as inflation. Not only that, inflation can be distinguished based on the increment of the general price level. Based on the concept, inflation can be grouped into 7 main degrees, and that is the moderate inflation, creeping inflation, galloping inflation, stagflation, hyperinflation, repressed inflation, and lastly the deflation.
There are positive, negative effects of an inflation in a country. But generally, inflation affects the total production, consumption, and income distribution. Inflation causes the general price level to rise. Thus, the real income of the population will decline and reduce the purchasing power of consumers. If the economy has reached full employment, inflation will increase the general price level without increasing the total output. This makes the cost of living increase and the standard of living decline. This is because the value of your bank balance will decrease as it takes more money to purchase the same goods. In inflation can also can increase the opportunity cost of holding money, uncertainty over future inflation, which may discourage investment and savings. If inflation were rapid enough, shortage of goods can happen as consumers begin hoarding out of concern that prices will increase in the future.
Next, cost plus inflation, where price increase as the cost of producing goods and service rises. This refers to an increase in the general price level associated with an increase in production costs. This may be due to rising global commodity prices. In general, business can pass on cost increase to customer by increasing. Similarly, increased labor costs are caused by inflation by a higher wages increase than an increase in productivity. When unemployment is low, wages price will rise. When they expect higher inflation, the people will demand higher wages. The cost of production per unit will rise as a result of this. Lastly, as a result, the cost of the final product or service that is manufactured and provided rise.
Imported inflation. Imported inflation is an increase in the cost of imported goods, has resulted in a general and long-term price increase. This price rise affects the cost of raw material as well as all imported goods and services used by businesses in a given country. Cost inflation is another name for imported inflation. Imported inflation is the result of an increase in the price of imported products, which include finished goods, partly finished goods, and raw materials used in the manufacturing process. Next, demand pull inflation. When resources are fully employed and aggregate demand is rising at a time when short-run aggregate supply is inelastic, demand pull inflation is inelastic. Demand pull inflation is largely the result of allowing the level of AID to rise too quickly in comparison to supply side capacity. Too much money chasing too few goods is another term for this situation. As a result of the excess demand for goods and services, businesses are under pressure to raise prices in order to boost profit margins. Consumption, government spending, investment, and net export are all potential sources of demand pull inflation. Prices will rise if the AD rises faster than the supply of goods and services. The economy will reach full employment as a result of the rise in aggregate demand, as it will be unable to meet the rising demand. As a result, prices will rise when demand outstrips supply.
Lastly, structural inflation. When a government pursues an overly loose monetary policy, structural inflation occurs. When a central bank prints too much money or keep interest rate too low for too long, the value of each unit of currency falls more than it would if demand were to rise. Lastly, this occurred as a result of changes in the economic system, structure, and management of a country's monetary policy.
Relations of inflation in this pandemic COVID-19. Based on pandemic COVID-19, we know that inflation in Malaysia is increasing. The types of inflation that involve is cost-push inflation and structural inflation. This is because in this pandemic COVID-19, people tend to buy more basic needs as the result of panic buying because of the restriction orders from the government, as it is one of the ways to stop the COVID-19. This causes the country to experience a high demand and rise of prices for raw material and other substances.
Moreover, the central bank has been given a low interest rate to help the people and the country economy, but it has been for too long and might causes the value of each unit of the currency to decrease more than we have expected. In conclusion, inflation also happened while we are in this pandemic situation.
This pandemic also has changed the market scenario to a different level because buyers and sellers both are more cautious now. Our market is always in progressive rasa. One of important in market is, for example, food supply, because it has many impact on the whole process. Um, for example, there are considerable concerns about food production, processing, and food demand. This pandemic has caused the movement restrictions of workers. For example, changes in demand of consumers have happened. Next, the closure of food production facilities, the restricted food trade policies, and also financial pressures on food supplies. And that small farmers and traders should be supported financially, and then facilities should change the working conditions and maintain the health and safety of employees by altering the measures of the health.
When the commencements caused the closure, everyone started working from home. Online meetings have become standard practice nowadays. 37% of consumers prefers to satisfy their core needs while staying indoor. 30% plan to shop more online in the future. All the students will not be in their school or college because they have to stay at home. For shopping and buying necessary foods or things at supermarket, there are new norms and rules to follow. For example, drive-through or an in-store pickup is replacing its card reading device to tap and pay, or mobile wallet authentication replacing other traditional payment methods like PIN-based authentication that are now not secure. Maintaining customer relationship is important during this crisis. Those organizations that master that will create greater value and empower the business to stand from the competition. The pandemic caused losses among small business. Some of the business had temporarily closed and nearly all of these closures are due to COVID-19. This happened due to reduction in demand. Because of this pandemic, many markets have been affected and the government need to be responsible of this problem. Thank you.
That's all from us. Thank you for watching.